The first step of the installation is to mount the unit under your van, and that starts with adding these brackets. So when you receive the kit, it's going to come with the brackets. They look like this. We're going to remove these washers and nuts. We don't actually use the nuts in the installation. They're just there to hold this block in place. So what we can do is we'll first take this under the van, kind of test fit it, make sure that everything is lining up, and then we'll go ahead and set these nutserts. So if you're curious as to what's going on with the T-nuts when you set them, here's how the tool works. You're going to thread this onto the end, and then essentially this is where the metal layer is going to be. So as I turn the tool, this part's going to crush, and it's going to create a connection like that. It's called a T-nut because it makes a T, essentially, or a plus sign when it's done. So let's see if we can see this in action. So there you have it. And then once that is connected and tight, you can put this on reverse and it'll back it off just enough for you to unscrew it from the T-nut. Here we are under the passenger side of the Sprinter. So if you're going to install on the passenger side, essentially right beneath the sliding door, then we're going to use these holes and these holes to mount the unit. These are pre-cut factory holes with undercoating on them, so we don't need to drill or protect any holes if we use these. If you're going to install the Incline anywhere else, including on the driver's side next to the fuel tank, then you will need to drill your own holes here. But essentially we're going to set the riv nuts, 2 here and 2 here, and then we'll use that to mount our bracket, and then we'll put the Incline in the bracket, and pretty simple, that's it. So we'll go ahead and set these first. Here's how we're going to set the riv nuts. First you take this and thread it all the way on to our tool here. Set that in there. Use this wrench to hold it. Make sure that's nice and tight. Then we'll take the included bit and start spinning it until it's tight. And that's it. One of those set, on to the next. Now we have 2 very secure attachment points, so let's go ahead and hang the first bracket. So we're going to put the bracket, make sure it lines up. It does. Put in the block, and then we're going to take these bolts, which are included, and the washers on them. You're going to want to hand thread these in to make sure they're going in straight. We definitely do not want to cross thread or strip out the threads on these T-nuts because they would be pretty difficult to remove if you did strip them. So I like to do everything first with the fingers. Once you feel the threads going in really smoothly, you know you're not going to cross thread. And then we'll go ahead and tighten them up. There we go. Now we'll do the other one. Now I'm going to go prep the heater core with everything we need to install it, but first I'm going to go ahead and expand these brackets and just give it some room to bring the heater in from the side. All right. So before we go ahead and take the heater core and install it under the van, we want to go ahead and put any of the fittings on here now that we can, because it's way easier to do it on a bench than it is under the van. The first thing is, are we going to put a heating element in here? And as of right now, I'm not going to install a heating element. This is a brand new van, and there's not going to be a power system in here or water system for quite a while. So I'm just going to leave the plug in here. But if you were going to install your heating element, you essentially just remove this, thread in, and thread in the element. And you want to do the heating element before you do the water in and out, because it's just easier to get to. So now I'm going to go ahead and install the water connections. I'm going to be using PEX A, so I have this type of water connection that basically goes from this 1/2 inch male directly into my PEX A. Super important anytime you do a connection like this to put on some thread seal tape. I'm going to go ahead and add some of that here, and we're going to thread on the fitting. And make sure it is nice and tight. Do the other one. There is a proper direction to thread this on, so you want the tape to go on in the same direction that you're going to be threading the fitting on, so righty-tighty. And that's important so that when you're putting the fitting on, you're not peeling this thread sealant back off. Also, I don't like to leave any of it bunched up, so I'll just tear off whatever isn't sitting flat on there. On the coolant loop side, we're going to install the 2 adapters. This is our 3/4 inch coolant line out and in, and we need to put adapters on so we can put heater hose on this. So I went ahead and did the thread seal tape on here as well. This one is a non-pressurized loop, so it's not likely to leak, but we're going to go ahead and tighten these down just as we would with the water fittings. All right, now we can take it under the van. When getting ready to install it, you want to make sure that the coolant hoses are pointing towards the front of the van. And I'm going to use a jack to help me get it under there and lift it up. So roll it under, I have to get it into the brackets, and then we'll use this to help us hold it up while we attach the brackets. there it is. Totally secure, never going anywhere. Before we tighten this up entirely, I want to make sure that it's sitting completely level so the drain hole is pointing straight down. There we go. We'll just get the best performance if we have it completely level. Props to all you installers who are out there doing this every day. It's physical work. We appreciate you guys. And if you're doing it yourself, you're probably getting a good little workout as well. All right, there we go. Level, secure, and ready to go. Now that we've got the unit installed under the van, we're gonna go ahead and start running our coolant lines. And so we'll start from here and go under the van. It's just a little easier to feed them down than it is to feed them up. In order to make the job a little bit easier, we're gonna start with removing the air box. Now, we're gonna send these hoses through behind this heat shield here. And we wanna do that in order to just protect the hoses from the engine. But I'm gonna go underneath and just open it up a little bit so it's gonna be easier to send my hoses through there. So if you have a new Sprinter 2023 or later, then we can actually do a connection right here to where the heater hose comes out of the heat exchanger for the cabin. And that's where we'll take our fluid to go back to the incline. And then down here, you can see this, but there's a return at the end of this metal tube that we can go right back in. So essentially what we've got here is this piece of metal is essentially what we're turning the coolant loop into, going back over to the incline. So really this gets eliminated. We may just leave it in place anyways, but we'll essentially take our hot coolant from here, run it to the incline, and then at the other end of this we'll run it back into the coolant loop. Something that's important is to use the correct type of heater hose. So this is Gates safety stripe, and the safety stripe is better because it allows this to get hotter. So we're running hoses that are somewhere near the engine and the exhaust here. So the safety stripe hose is what you want to use if you want to have the best protection from this hose getting too hot. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these and feed them down together right behind the heat shield and towards the heating unit. It's probably the most difficult part of the job, is just getting these fed correctly, because it's a pretty tight gap. Let me go under there and see if I can pull it the rest of the way. Now that those are behind the heat shield, I'm gonna pull them so I have enough slack to get back to the heater. And those are gonna be really well protected back there. All right, and there we go, that's done. All right, so this I'm gonna run to the coolant in side here. And I'm just gonna temporarily put it on here so that I know the length that I need. I'm gonna need to get a clamp on before I actually attach it, but just running it so I can get my length. All right, and I'll connect this to my coolant out. So now that I've got both of these run, I can actually get the clamps on here and secure these hoses permanently. So now I'll go ahead and slide one of these over the end of each of these hoses and put it back over the barb fitting. Let me just use heat to get a connection here. Now I'm using this battery powered one here. I'm already noticing that it doesn't really quite get hot enough. Probably want to use a corded heat gun on this one. But the nice thing is that since the coolant fluid flows through here and gets hot, as that heats up, it actually allows the power clamp to tighten up even more over time when it gets hot. So I'm gonna go ahead and set these with this one. I'm gonna come back with a powered one to get it all the way as hot as it can be. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and loosen this hard line. Looks like it's got 2 clamps on it. I'm going to save this because I'm going to use it later to clamp my hose back. We can take our intake hose, and that's going to get connected right up to here. So I'm going to get some rags. We're going to have a little bit of fluid here to deal with. So I don't want that getting on the engine because then you can smell it. So I'm gonna get some rags, get this area prepped, and then we can go ahead and hook this up. All right, we are released. Now I'm gonna try to do this without spilling much fluid. Okay, I'm gonna get a little cup. Okay, I'm even gonna put this little cup under here. Okay, very minimal spillage. We like that. All right, I'm gonna steal the clamp off of here. Okay, that still has fluid in it, so I'll put that up there. I'm just moving the clamp over to this new piece of hose. Okay, so that's fully expanded. It catches on there. Then we can just release that after it's connected. I'm going to go ahead and run this in a way that it has the least likelihood to kink. Oh, there we go. Oh, there it goes. Just leverage down on that, and should be good to go. Of course, we're going to check that once it's all up and running, but that should do it. Okay, and I'm taking this off because I need to use this clamp down at the bottom to connect our return hose. So here is the return hose. I'm just going to go ahead and put this on there and get it ready. Moving all of my cloths down here. And now I'll go ahead and release the lower hose. I'm going to have to push this upper one back. So what I've done, there is now a like a little bucket underneath the van here. So this one's going to have some fluid in it, so once I disconnect it, I can point it down there. And if we get any leakage from the whole system itself, it can run into the bucket or get connected by the cloth. But essentially, I need to remove this and then quickly attach this to it. And I think I'm going to grab a razor to release that a little bit easier because it feels like it's on there really tight right now. Okay. A little bit of spillage, but not much. Get it all the way on. Get the clamp up. Now the hardest part is done. So we've got the coolant hose hooked up on the engine side and on the heater side. Right now the coolant hoses don't have any fluid in them, so in order to minimize air in the system, because we are introducing a new length of pipe, I'm going to go ahead and use a funnel to fill this hose up all the way before we connect it for the final time to the engine. All right, so this is full now. All right, so that's it. Just 2 connections to the engine coolant loop, making sure everything's secure, and now we can actually turn the engine on, get the coolant flowing, and we're going to be looking for leaks. We're going to be testing the temperature on the line going to the heater and back to just make sure that we have the correct flow. All right, so let's start it up. So now that we've run the van for about 10 minutes, the first time, what you want to do is come in here and check that both of these hoses are hot. Again, this is the most likely thing that you would get wrong, is connecting the improper lines going in and out. So since these check valves allow the fluid to only flow one direction, you need to make sure that the coolant in is coming from the upper fitting under the hood. This is coming out of the heater box. And then the coolant out is the one that goes back to the lower part of the radiator. So basically, if both of them are hot, then it means the coolant is flowing and you're good. And both of these are. So we are in good shape on the coolant side. And now it's time to move on to the plumbing. So now here's the deal, guys. This is a brand new van. There's no water system in here yet, and there's no power system. So on this end, which are your water and heating element connections, I'm going to just leave these off. It's totally fine to run the unit without water in it in terms of the engine coolant loop. You just would not want to install the heating element and turn that on without there being water in here. So when you're ready to do your water though, it's super simple. All you're gonna do is take your cold water line and run it into right here, and your hot water line is going to come out of here. The other thing, let's not forget, is that it's really good idea to have a check valve on the cold water inside so that when the cold water goes in, hot water can't go back in that line, because when you open your faucet, you want it to cold, you want cold water, not hot. And since this does build up some pressure in it and the hot water is going to want to get out, a check valve will prevent that. The other thing is, on the hot side here, we do need to install that thermal expansion tank. That's super important as well. So it can be installed right here. It can be installed inside your van. It doesn't really matter, as long as it's in the hot water line somewhere, then it's going to serve the same purpose. And then the final thing we talked about is a mixer valve. You could install a mixer here, or you can also install it wherever the hot water goes back into the van. That's pretty much it. The unit is installed. I'm happy with it. We do have to secure our heater hose lines, but really altogether, pretty quick installation. This could easily be done in a couple hours. Secure those up there. Should do it. While we're taking this out and warming it up, because I want to get the engine hot and make sure the coolant is flowing properly and all that, just wanted to show you there's a spot on the display here where you can monitor your temperatures, and this is really important. For the first 500 to 1,000 miles, when you after you've installed the Incline, you do want to monitor the temperatures, because the worst case scenario here is that your fluid's not flowing properly and the engine's not cooling. That could be a problem. It's not an immediate disaster, but if you notice the engine warming up, you would want to check that everything is still installed correctly. So there's 2 things you would notice. First of all, you will get a low coolant warning if there's not enough coolant in the system. So that would be the first warning you get. And then second, we're just going to watch the temperatures here. We've got the engine temperature and the oil temperature, and you have the cold and hot, min and max there. So obviously, if you're getting up to where there is a red line, that is a problem. So this is great that it's built in. You can monitor your temperatures, also actually your battery voltage, which is really nice. And where you find this is you just go to the home screen, go over to info, click on that, and there it is. I turned the heat on all the way just to make sure that the coolant is flowing through this loop, and we're getting heat out of the cabin heater here. So now I'm just going to turn that off because it's too hot to have heat on. And now should be sending the coolant back to the incline. And it'll just take us a few minutes of driving to confirm that everything is, that the engine coolant is flowing correctly and that all the fittings are good. We did get a low coolant warning while we were driving, so that's normal during the first few trips. Because obviously it's pulled more fluid into the system, so we're just going to go ahead and top this up to the line. It could take a couple cycles before it is full. Let's go ahead and do that now. By running the engine, it will allow the pump to circulate this in, so I'm going to start the engine back up right now. So that's it, guys. We installed the incline, we hooked it up to the engine coolant system, we tested it, and the last thing to do would be to hook up the water lines. All in all, it should only take you a couple hours to do this. It's not that difficult, something you can pretty much do yourself as well. So we didn't hook the water up on this one, but in order to do that, you would just hook up your cold and hot water lines, turn your pump on, and the unit will start filling with water. You'll get a lot of air coming out of your faucet as the air is purged from the unit, but once you get a steady stream of water, you should be good to go. Then the final thing you'd want to do is run the engine with water in the tank, and you'll have hot water on demand anytime you drive the van. All right, go ahead and leave any questions or comments that you guys have in the comment section below. I'll go ahead and answer them and get you guys any additional information that we missed in the video. All right, thanks again for watching, and we'll see you guys again next time.